Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and we're back again with another Spirit Island video. In every game of Spirit Island, we are repeatedly given the task to pick what is the best card to gain out of a selection of 4 options. As a beginner, this is incredibly stressful. We can easily succumb to the paradox of choice. By gaining 1 card, we are throwing away 3 of them, and that can be very stressful. Gaining experience with this game will help us parse these options and more quickly identify which cards are good or not. Some factors that can influence the decision include elements, right? Does the elements of this minor power match the elemental identity of my spirit? Does it help me threshold my innates? And then also energy. Can I actually afford to play this card? But the most important part of any card is the text box. What does it actually do? People generally agree that the best cards in the minor power deck are the support cards. Things like Gift of Nature's Connection, Elemental Boon, Gift of Constancy, they're always regarded as the very best cards that you can draft. The next most popular cards are going to be those defend cards. Things like Sap the Strength of Multitude and Nature's Resilience are also very, very highly rated. But in total, there's only 13 spirit targeting powers and 17 defend cards, which leaves 70 other cards in the deck that we actually have to read, we have to think about, and figure out if it's something that we actually want to play or something that's worthwhile towards advancing ourselves towards a victory. So in addition to the aforementioned categories, there's basically 5 things that minor powers do. We have damage with cards like Rouse the Trees in Stone, bulk fear, such as Rain of Blood. We got blight removal, like from Purifying Flame. We got invader pushing and gathering, such as Visions of Fiery Doom. And then we also have Dahan movement, such as Call to Migrate. All of these things are really good and important attributes to add to our spirit's arsenal of powers. Depending on the circumstances of the game, all of these cards can be very viable and very strong drafts. Now you may have noticed there's another set of 5 minor powers here that are still face down. And it's actually these cards that have not revealed yet that is going to be the focus of today's video. And these cards produce the 5 major tokens in the game. So we have Wilds coming from cards like Animated Rackroot. We got Disease from Fleshrot Fever. Strife coming from Twilight Fog Brings Madness. Beasts from Prowling Panthers, and Badlands from Desiccating Winds. And so the question is, are these cards good? Well, these cards all produce tokens, and so really the question that we're asking is, are tokens good? And before we can really talk about are they good, let's just do a quick little reminder of what the tokens do. So first we have the Wild token, prevents the next Explore, and then it's removed. Okay, there are 8 different minor powers that produce wilds. There are 6 unique powers that produce wilds. And then there's Keeper of the Wilds that represents that it is on the spirit panel. So in this case, it would be from his right innate power. We also have, 10 major powers, a Blighted Island card, and 2 events that all produce wilds tokens. Next is Disease. It prevents the next build, and then it is removed. Okay, we have Vengeance and Wounded Waters Bleeding that can both produce disease on their spirit panels. We have 8 minor powers, 6 major powers, and 3 unique powers. Okay, in addition, there are also 10 different events that can produce disease. Okay, next we have Strife. It blocks a specific invader's damage, and the next time that they damage Dahan or the land, it is removed. Okay, take note that this does not block damage dealing to other invaders, so things such as Instruments of Their Own Ruin, or that one card from Trickster still work perfectly fine, and the Strife is not removed. It's only when the damage is dealt to Dahan or to the land. Okay, and we have 8 minor sources of Strife. There are 5 majors, 4 unique powers, and then 2 spirits that naturally produce Strife, that being Trickster and Wandering Voice. If we want to be really pedantic, Frightful Keening doesn't produce Strife by itself, but it moves our Incarna, and then moving the Incarna will trigger our special rule to create a Strife, so whatever. In addition, this is the only token that can be produced by Fear cards, and there are 9 Fear cards that produce Strife, as well as the Slaves Rebellion event. Next, we have the Beast token. The Beast will harm invaders and generate fear as specified by powers and event cards. Okay, there are 8 minor powers that produce beasts. There are 5 unique powers that produce beasts. There are 10 major powers that produce beasts, and there are 4 spirits that produce beasts with many minds, sharp fangs, wounded wild, and breath of darkness down your spine. Additionally, there is 1 blighted island card and 9 different events that can produce beast tokens. And then last, there are the Badlands. They increase damage to invaders or Dahan by 1 and only once per action. Okay, there are 7 unique powers that produce Badlands. There are 7 unique powers that produce Badlands, and there's 1 spirit that makes Badlands, that being Lure of the Deep Wilderness. In addition, there are 7 major powers that produce Badlands, 1 Blighted Island card, and 2 events. When trying to determine how good a token is, we need to approximate how much value we're going to get from that token. And so, in order to approximate that, it's actually easiest to go in reverse order of the way that I just introduced them. So starting with Badlands, they're really, really easy to figure out how good they are because there's basically nothing random associated with them. There is a grand total of 2 events that care about having Badlands. And both of them basically just do like a damage, right? Maybe 2 damage. It's not much of anything at all. Okay, we're not planning on getting some random, unexpected value coming from these Badlands. The value that we're most likely to get from it is what we put in ourselves. Okay, if we are going to be doing damage powers, then we know that we're going to get value from any Badlands that we produce. In a very similar manner, if we do a Dahan defense strategy, a Badlands will also make it riskier in the sense that the invaders can do extra damage to the Dahan and potentially kill the Dahan easier. But if we have sufficient defense, then the Dahan's going to counterattack and kill off the invaders very effectively. And then in addition to that, to get the most amount of value from our Badlands, we actually maximize our value by doing a lot of small attacks. If we have a Badlands and we do like some big major power and that does, 8 damage in a land, going from 8 to 9 is a very small percentage increase. It's only an increase of, 12%. And it's only going to happen once with that 1 power. But on the other hand, if we used 3 different powers, each of them dealing, 2 damage, well, each of those 2 damage powers would get an additional 1 damage added. That's a 50% increase in damage. We'd go from 6 damage up to 9 damage. Every single action that is taken gets value from that Badlands over and over and over again. And so we can very quickly suss out the types of spirits that we're going to want Badlands with and the ones that we're not. Typically, something that does a lot of control, but not a lot of incremental damage, something like a River Surges in Sunlight, is probably not going to get as much value from that Badlands as opposed to something, like a Sharp Fangs, who every single turn is doing chip damage here, chip damage there, and just trying to keep control of all the invaders just through little actions left, right, and center. While the value of the token may not be absolute, it's incredibly easy to accurately predict. Now, Beasts are also a token that is not consumed. It's going to stay around for the whole game. And I do want to say that there are some spirits, like Sharp Fangs, like Many Minds, that care a lot about Beasts. And they're going to use Beasts in ways that are not inherent to the token. And I'm not going to be considering those spirits for this video. Obviously, if you're playing one of those guys, Beasts are going to be incredibly important. I want to think about Beasts more in the sense of just like the generic spirit who interacts with them not at all. Maybe think of one of the low complexity spirits that don't interact with any of the tokens when you're thinking about everything in this video. Even if we're playing with the spirit that has no direct value from Beast tokens, we're still gonna get value from them. There are 4 fear cards that provide value based on having a beast on the board, which we can see here in the corner, adding strife, removing invaders, things like that. However, there's also a ton of events that will give us value from having beasts. In total, there are 61 events in the deck. 33 of them do things positively that interact with beasts. There are 5 more events that just add beasts but don't do anything with them, but 33 of the 61 are going to give us some amount of positive value. That's a greater than 50% chance every single turn of the game for us to get some amount of return from this token that we don't have to do anything to create. So of these 33 different event cards, 9 of them are random one-offs, right? Where there's no repeats anywhere within the event deck, and all the rest of them, the other 24, exist in multiples. Now, even though there are several different types of things that are going on, the effects of these cards can actually be incredibly similar to each other, even if the absolute text on the card might vary from card to card. Taking a look at the ones that exist in multiples, the most common one is Explorer's Blunder, which you can see right here on Focused Farming. It says on each board, destroy 2 explorers among lands with beasts. They could be in the same land, they could be split across 2 different lands, but we just get some free explorer kills. Another beast event that exists as a 5 of is Prey on the Heedless, which we can see over here in the corner, Visions Out of Time. It says each beast deals 1 damage. Now, this I think is an example of where the text on the 2 different cards says 2 different things. However, the end result is usually the exact same, that being beasts kill explorers, right? 1 damage is typically just going to be used to kill off explorers. Maybe we have just a whole bunch of slow damage and we can use that 1 from a beast in order to maximize our returns. However, more often than not, it's just going to be picking off explorers with beasts in 2 different ways. And in fact, if we continue down some of the other ones, we'll see that this is the most common thing that beasts will do for us, just killing off explorers for free. The benefit of killing explorers is not that the explorers are dead, but hopefully we can prevent a build with them. If we get really, really good timing and we have just an explorer, a beast in a land that's going to be building, if we get rid of the explorer, if we kill it, great, there's no build. Or we could push it. And the next most common event is going to be Beast Chase Off the Homesteaders, which you can see here on the bottom of Eager Explorers. It pushes explorers out of a land with Beast, and it can also push a town too. It's a little bit more flexibility. And in much the same way, another 4 of that exists is Prey on the Unwary, which we can see here in the upper corner, and it says each beast kills an explorer. So we can see the 4 most common events that interact with beasts, all of them get rid of explorers. Next is Beast Attack. That's a 3 of, deals 2 damage in a land, like we can see here from Strange Tales, attract explorers. And then the last one that exists in the multiple is Beast Prowl, which says that each beast generates a fear. This is the only one of the multiples that does not eliminate an explorer. Some of the random one-offs will kill off an explorer as well. So in total, there are 23 events that will kick an explorer out of a land, whether by pushing it or by killing it, just with the beast for free. That's an insane amount of free value. In fact, that's 38% of the event deck, a greater than 1 in 3 chance that a beast is just going to solve a land for you. So, that's pretty good, right? That's something that you could almost rely on. If you don't have a really clean, perfect, efficient solution to a land, you could just roll the dice, throw a beast in there, or just notice that a beast already exists in the land. And that means that we can hope, right, a more than a third, right, almost 2/5 chance that the land just takes care of itself for you. Even if we don't hit the magical timing where there's just a beast, an explorer in a land that's about to build and we get it removed, even if we don't get that perfect structure to work out for us, these beasts will produce a whole bunch of free value over the course of a game. We're generally going to be pulling 6 or 7 events every game, and since we know that a little bit more than half of them give us value, 3 or 4 times that beasts are just going to give us stuff. So anyways, on the screen, I've got all the events that give us positive value from these beasts. And I'm just going to click through them nice and slow. So Badlands and Beasts are permanent tokens They go on the board and they stay there for the whole game. There are some effects that get rid of them, but they're very few and far between. Now we can contrast that to the wilds, disease, and strife tokens. Those are one-time use and then they are consumed and they go away. And this is far more interesting to me. I think it's just kind of a little bit more abstract for how good they are. And the more abstract we can get, the more interesting it can be. I think when the value of any given card or effect is too absolute, you measure it once and then that's the answer and it's not particularly interesting. But having an uncertain amount of value leaves plenty of gray area for us to argue and debate, and that is pretty fun. What do I mean by unknown value? We know exactly what wilds, disease, and strife do. They stop and explore, a build, or a ravage. Well, there's two reasons. First, just because a card does a thing doesn't mean it's actually useful. This game comes down to a lot of crucial breakpoints. And the first essential numerical breakpoint we all learn is the value of a defend card. So if a land is ravaging, it'll blight, so long as that ravage does 2 damage. It doesn't matter if the ravage does 2 damage or 200 damage, it's only going to add 1 blight. So let's say we're facing down a pretty simple, pretty standard setup, 1 explorer, 1 town, and 1 city, ravaging all together. A small defend card such as Dark and Tangle Woods is going to be pretty useless. Sure, you do get the full value of the card. You get 3 defense and you get 2 fear, but you still take a blight. And I think it's fair to assume that the desired outcome of playing that card is to prevent a blight from coming down. And so when we don't get that desired result, the card feels like a waste. And strife is obviously quite analogous to defense, and we can repeat that prior example by replacing Dark and Tangle Woods with Fire in the Sky. In much the same way, we will get 2 fear, and we will reduce incoming damage by 3, but once again, we still take a blight. So when I say that wilds, disease, or strife have unknown value, what I'm really saying is that it's unknown if these tokens will provide any value at all. And if a card might not provide any value, can we confidently say that it's a good card? If a wild goes into a land that has any invaders at all in it, sure, you deny the explore, but the build's still going to happen, and the ravage is still going to happen too. If you have a disease in a land that has even just a single explorer in it, as long as there's anything in it, an explorer comes in, 2 explorers in the land, deals 2 damage, and that will add a blight, right? We need to have like a perfectly empty board, an empty setup in order for these tokens to have good value. And so if the card isn't providing full value, why play it? Every card that we play at every point of the game comes with a cost. Even if it costs 0 energy to play the card, there's still an opportunity cost. We're only given so many card plays. And if we're going to be playing this card, that means we're not playing this card. Okay, there's an opportunity cost here. There's a trade-off here. And so do we want to be playing cards that have a guaranteed known value or an unknown value with unreliable returns? Of course, that's the fun of playing Spirit Island. Every turn we're tasked with making tough choices. What cards do I draft? What cards do I play? And this perpetual tension is just the thing that makes Spirit Island so fun. When we have tough choices, we have interesting choices, right? That's what I think is pretty interesting and fun. The second reason that there's unknown value in tokens is because we can't control when the token will actually be spent. Let's just imagine a scenario where you add a Wilds token to the board on turn 1. Maybe you're playing Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds, and you have your right innate, so you're going to add a token to the board on turn 1. Let's just say you throw it in the sands. Well, maybe the stage 1 sands is the card that happened to get removed, and the stage 2 sands is the one that happened to get removed. And so you wind up not activating a sands, you're not exploring that land with a Wilds token until at least turn 7. Maybe later if the very first stage 3 card isn't a sands card. Now all of a sudden, was that Wilds useful? Was it helpful? Was it effective? I mean, it never got activated, so we invested in action, but we never got any return on that action. By the time turn 7, turn 8 comes around, we're probably in the end game, right? We're throwing down big mages, we're producing tons of fear, we're probably in terror level 3, and a single explorer being denied is like, cool, but it's probably not the make or break action that's gonna make a big difference at all. We need a good return on our investment for every card that we play, and the sooner we get that payoff, the better. For any non-token producing card, it's easy to measure the value of the card because that effect happens immediately. We can feel good about playing a card because we know that we're going to play it, we're going to do an effect, and it's going to resolve instantaneously. With tokens, you might feel a certain level of like comfort and calm knowing that you're protected for some unknown future threat. The fear of what you don't see can be just so terrifying, and having protection against that might feel good, but it doesn't do anything to improve the situation of the board immediately. In general, the adversaries start dramatically stronger than the spirits, and while both the spirits and the adversaries grow in strength over the course of the game, the spirits do grow faster, and there's that tipping point where we start to win the board back, and then the game ends quite quickly thereafter. So where do Wilds, Disease, and Strife fit into that narrative, fit into that story arc of us improving in power? And if we can imagine like these power curves going up, with this being the adversaries and this being the spirits, right? We can imagine them both going up, and then the spirits do something like destroy a town, and that's gonna, chip away at the adversaries, and as they grow up, the delta in power is smaller. Okay, maybe we use some Dahan and Defend, and we prevent a blight, and we get a couple kills, and then all of a sudden, boom, now we're stronger, and we go from there. With the tokens, right, they'd be going up, we're dropping tokens on the board, nothing happens. Okay, we're still taking a lot of punishment, still taking a lot of pain, then all of a sudden, we're getting some free value, and things will even out eventually down the line. I don't know, I mean, what is the difference between, adding a disease and killing a town? Eventually, you wind up in the same position. If you deny a town from existing, it's kind of the same thing as killing the town. It's just the convenience of being able to just kind of fill out your turns, right? If you've got a few immediate actions, and then maybe you have one extra card play, be like, all right, I guess I'll throw a disease out there, and we don't need anything this turn, and we can secure ourselves for a better tomorrow. Perhaps that's the value of tokens. As I alluded to before, the Wilds and the Disease tokens are at their max effectiveness in situations where a land is empty. If you have an empty land and you put a Wilds in it, you deny the Explore, you deny the Build, you deny the Ravage, right? You stop the whole chain of actions with that Wilds. If you have a Disease, it's kind of the same thing, right? The Explore happens, but then you stop the Build, so then you only get a 1 damage Ravage, and that's effectively the same thing as 0 under most situations. And then Strife, right? You need to have like an Explorer in a town, or one single invader in a land. You really can't have that much going on for a Strife to be effective. And that's really hard to plant ahead of time, right? Because if you have like a city in a land, unless if it's specifically like on turn 1 on the land number 2 city with the disease, so that when the Explorer comes in, you stop the build, and then it's only a 1 damage Ravage outside of that one very narrow situation, you really can't get maximum value from Strife too far ahead of time. But at least in the context of Wilds and Disease, I don't think they're a game-winning strategy so much as they're a game-securing strategy, where once you're already ahead, once you're already doing good, then it helps you close out the game by just getting rid of distractions. It's not going to win you the game by, fighting back and destroying the invaders. You have some big, terrifying, built-up land. Wilds, Disease, they do nothing to help you in that situation, right? Put those out on the fringes, and then they become maximally effective. So I feel like I'm starting to ramble a little bit and just starting to ask more questions than I have answers. And so I think this is where I need to put a pause down, and I'll send it back to you guys. What do you guys think? Are tokens good, specifically the Wilds, Disease, and Strife? Or maybe when it works and when they're effective and you get those big swingy lockdown moments, does that emotional response overwhelm the reality of, maybe they're not as effective and useful as we would hope? What's your experience? I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments. Anyways, today is definitely one of those ones where I've got like 90% of an idea and I need to kick it back to you guys and hear your thoughts before I can, keep going and bring this thing to full picture. So that's all for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have yourselves a glorious day.